you to each and every one of the women and the girls, the lesbians, the gay men, and all the other men who have stood with us and spoken out. Thank you for having the courage to say what we all knew was true, what we all knew was right, and to carry on saying it in the spite of the face of all the abuse and threats, etc., that have gone on. And what we all knew was true and right was affirmed on 16th of April this year, when the Supreme Court announced its judgment in the case of For Women Scotland versus Scottish Ministers. All references to sex, man and woman in the Equality Act are to biological sex. Woman is an exclusive category, a category that cannot include men. Lesbian can only ever mean a same-sex attracted woman, never a man. This is a historic and significant moment, and our Step Up Senedd campaign is a reminder, right here on the steps of our Welsh Parliament, that the Supreme Court clarification has given our government and all our public bodies the golden opportunity now to rebalance their policies and to properly recognise their responsibilities to women and girls. Because they need rebalancing. From Welsh Government policies that state biology-denying mantras to those funded organisations that parrot these beliefs and therefore discriminate against women and girls, the Supreme Court judgment now means that delay is no excuse. We're here today to remind the Welsh Government and the Senedd that the Supreme Court judgment is the law, and that is why any delay, any dithering in complying with the judgment is not acceptable. There is no menu of optional courses of action. Lawful and unlawful is as binary as sexes. The Welsh Government and the Senedd must step up to restore and protect the rights of women and girls in Wales. And it must be now. Not next month, not at the end of the summer, not next year, but now. Since the Supreme Court judgment, we have heard much of listening to one very particular group of those affected by it, their feelings, their needs, but little about listening to the women who are affected. Where were our extended primetime news interviews about how we felt when our single-sex spaces were unlawfully declared to be mixed-sex ones and our rights were given away? Where were our consultations with ministers? Where were the sympathetic statements of support from the floor of the Senedd? Some exceptions aside. So we also want to remind the Senedd today that there are indeed real people involved. People who have lost rights they should have had. People whose voices have been ignored and silenced. People who have been made fearful for their jobs. People who've been excluded from their own spaces and services and opportunities. People who have been impacted by a decade of misinterpretation of the law. And the overwhelming majority of those people are women and girls. Women and girls who have heard themselves traduced, called terrible bigots, who have been abused and denied a voice and have been put in fear. You have all been vindicated. You are always on the right side of history.
My granddaughter worries about going to school when she's got her period because she's embarrassed in the mixed-sex toilets. Why should this be happening to her and to other young girls? She shouldn't have to make a choice between her own dignity, privacy and her learning. Now schools must step up and she won't have to miss out on her education. That's what the Supreme Court judgment means to me.
Domestic violence made me flee my home. I was terrified and traumatised, but I was able to flee to a refuge where I felt safe for the first time because only women would be there. Women in Wales right now don't have the reassurance of guaranteed single-sex domestic violence refuges. But the Supreme Court judgment means that other women like me should now be able to go to a refuge, safe in the knowledge that they'll only encounter other women and not face the traumatic presence of men. That's what this means to me.
I'm disabled. It's a progressive condition and I will end up needing care. It'll mean I need help with the most basic bodily functions and I want this done by another woman. I do not want to have to deal with a man turning up for intimate care when I am vulnerable and dependent. I've been trying to talk to my local authority about guarantees that same-sex care really will mean another actual woman. It's been hard to have these conversations. Now I feel I can really stick up for myself and my rights and my bodily autonomy. That's what the Supreme Court judgment means to me.
There was once a thriving lesbian community in Wales with a huge variety of events and activities which were for lesbians only. But these have had to go underground or ceased because of the pressure to admit men who call themselves lesbians. Venues and funders stopped supporting us because we excluded men. This has been especially cruel for young lesbians who have nowhere to go to meet up, socialise, and have fun with just other young lesbians. Instead, many are lonely, isolated, and told they could be men. I'm really looking forward to rebuilding our lesbian community for all ages. Knowing the Supreme Court ruling fully supports us is a fabulous feeling. If sex is not biological, then there's no such thing as same-sex attraction. Well, I'll tell you one thing is for sure. Lesbians are not attracted to certificates.
If I'm out at night, me and my friends often use the toilet as a safe space where we can get away from men who are hassling us. The ladies' loo should be a place where we can get away and be sure men can't come in. Toilets that advertise they are for women should be exactly that, not areas where men can access. Now they can't get away with invading our toilets. We can have our safe space back. That's what the Supreme Court judgment means to me.
When I need medical support, I don't want my stays in hospital to be even worse than they have to be. I don't want men on the women's wards with me. It's humiliating. I feel very vulnerable on a hospital ward when I'm asleep, when I'm undressed, in bed, and sometimes needing help with personal care or being examined. I want the assurance of women-only wards. Health trusts have been providing this to women. Now, that will change, and that's what the Supreme Court judgment means to me.
My daughter lost out on medal chances in a sport that she loved to a man competing in the women's races. Despite all her training and dedication, a man came along and used his strength and speed to take opportunities away from females. It was heartbreaking for her, and compounded by the fact that this man also used the female showers and changing rooms. Can you imagine the effect on a young girl or a young woman? Many have just given up on sport, and that is just tragic. Now, I know that shouldn't happen again to another generation of young women, and that's what the Supreme Court judgment means to me.
On behalf of all victims of rape and sexual violence, we should not have to listen to our rapist described as a woman. We should not have the offences of a man recorded as being those of a woman. If we are strip searched by the police, we should have the right in law to a female officer only, and not to have to deal with a man forcing us to be undressed and touching us. The law must surely now respect the law. That's what the Supreme Judgment ruling means to me.
The First Minister has accepted and respected the results of the Supreme Court hearing. The law is very clear now, and the whole of Welsh policies, both at Welsh Government level and at public body level, will need to be changed to come into line with that. And the reason for that at the moment is that women cannot be assured of single-sex spaces and single-sex services in Wales, and to be compliant with the law, that must be the case.
For years, women have been fighting, have been told we are transphobic, we're bigoted, we need to shut up, to sit down, to go away, that we're shrill. We've had our representatives here at the Senedd refuse to speak to us. And all we were saying was that women have human rights too. It has been a shame and a shock, but one of the best things that's come out of it is that maybe, arguably for the first time since the Land Army of World War II, a grassroots movement of women from across the class spectrum, the political spectrum, every race, every part of the country have come together to say we're going to cooperate and stand together and fight for the truth. Men can't be women, and women have human rights. If there's one thing you take away from today, it is that women's rights are human rights, and the law backs us up on that. So I want you all to raise a metaphorical glass and say with me, here's to the women who stand, the women who take their lives in their hands,
Women who take their lives in their hands.
who hold to the truth on point of pain, who are told they're insane and to stay in their lane. Here's to the women who still speak out, the women who say, speak, scream and shout to make their voices heard. I know there's safety in silence, but you know that doesn't protect you from violence. Here's to the women who fight, the women with foresight, the women who teach, and each of you expanding her reach so that others can find. Here's to the women who know their worth and what their sisters are worth, who birth daughters for warriors with only their words, and who step down from pedestals, who rise up from doormats, who hang their full weight from barred windows and count reps while making their plans. Here's to those women. Here's to the women who stand.
Welcome, Bow, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We keep it going. Our eye is on the Senedd now, and we will make sure that they adhere to the Supreme Court hearing. Who wants to go to the pub?